Hey guys, I just wanted to make you a video because I don't know, I think it's time for it, and I really feel kind of compelled to do it. There's one thing I kind of want to talk about is in your medical entrepreneur journey, it's actually two journeys. We focus a lot on the external journey, which is like the journey of the business, the journey of your success. How to get more customers, how to get your message right, how to get, your funnel looking, this way or that way. There's also another journey that's maybe even more important in order for the first journey to work, and that's the internal journey. It's the internal stuff that you're thinking about. It's how you deal with stress, fear of judgment, self worth, abundance versus scarcity, like that kind of stuff. And so I think that it's important that we get trained on both as we proceed, because what I found in my own life is that many times as I went through the internal journey, the external journey would become easier and become more surmountable. And so I feel like you have to do both in order to really be successful. So a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. So today we're just going to take the first step of your internal journey, and we're going to ask a question, which is, when it comes to thoughts of yourself, which do you choose? Do you choose doubt or do you choose faith? And if you're somebody who chooses doubt, then you're saying things in your head such as, it probably won't work. It might work for them, but not for me. I can't do that. It's too hard. I was never given I was never trained in, whatever it was. You have these thoughts that are repeating like this. If you're somebody who steps out in faith, then you're saying stuff like, I can do that. I'm sure I will figure it out. If somebody else can figure it out, I know I can. I know that I can figure it out. I completed things way harder than this in the past. And then my personal favorite, this is nothing. And I'll tell you a story about this one. So there's a story that I want to share with you about faith and doubt in action. So we had this one attending, and he was called Lucky Larry. And the reason why he was called Lucky is just like when you were on call with him, everything just worked out. Like you didn't have any horrible cases. There was like some of the best calls. Or like everybody wanted to be on call with him because things went really, really easy. He was always very laid back, and also many of the times whenever a problem did arise, the first thing I remember, he always had like a catchphrase that he'd use all the time, which was like, "This is nothing." He'd say like this, like, "This is nothing," and everybody kind of made fun of him for it. But like anything that happened, he would just make it like, "Oh, this is nothing," and we'd do it, and like it'd be simple and it'd be over and it'd be easy. And so there's like somewhat to his magic or why he was so lucky. Everybody assumed he was really, really happy because he was lucky and so many things worked out for him. But only years later did I realize that the reason why things worked out for him was because he was so happy. And so you can contrast that to another interesting case I had during my training. We had a guy, I trained at University of Miami, Jackson Memorial Hospital, and we had a guy basically who was on, like my first year was a surgical internship, so we had a guy that basically was had a pelvic crush injury. Like he was working somewhere and the gigantic machine had fallen on him and essentially crushed his pelvis. And as you know, with pelvic crushes, they're extremely hard to put back together. They take a long time to heal. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. And during this time, while you're recovering, you're essentially bedbound. It's a real not fun thing. And nobody liked to take care of him because he was just like a very negative guy. Like nothing always worked out for him. Like anytime you do anything, like it's for some reason, like you change a bandage and like the bandage would, fall off, or it was always something wrong. But he was kind of known as, everybody called him the pelvic crush guy because he was on the census for so long. Just everybody kind of knew him as this. And I remember finally we got a chance to discharge him. And so we discharged him. He was in the hospital for 4 months. And we finally got a chance to discharge him. And I remember I was on call the next day and he came back in and I was like, the pelvic crush guy's here again? Like what in the world? We worked so hard to get him out. And I could not believe this when I first heard this. Basically, he was out of the hospital. He was in some of his family had picked him up, and he was in the back of an SUV going down the highway in Miami, and literally the freeway sign had fallen down on him and actually fractured his leg. It didn't hit his pelvis this time, but it basically fractured his leg. It the freeway sign on the freeway actually fell down on the car, and somehow enough force had come to basically fracture his leg. And so he basically ended up turning around, and he got admitted again back to the same area and everything. And it just blew me away. It's like, wow, what are the chances of that happening? It must be 1 in a trillion, But, he was always, kind of focused on negative, and I would say he's a very doubt-based person. So we all know this character. This is from Christopher Robin's Winnie the Pooh. And so basically, or Winnie the Pooh has Christopher Robin in it, I think, something like that. But basically, this is the character Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. And basically, we all kind of have seen somebody in our lives just like this where kind of a negative cloud follows them. For me, it was the pelvic crush guy who literally had a freeway sign. It's just like, what are the chances of that even happening? Anyway, but you see somebody like this. And so these are people that are based kind of more in doubt. So a couple lessons you can take away from Larry and Pete is that from Larry, you can always remember to believe in yourself, have faith in yourself, believe that things will work out for you. Larry was always a very positive guy. Like everything always worked out for him, but he always started believing that everything always worked out for him. So he's already looking for that solution, you know? I always say stuff like, this is nothing. Whereas Pete, pelvic crush guy, would basically emphasize future negative events. He often overemphasized negative things, like if a bandage was like slightly sloped, he'd be like, "Oh, this is horrible. It's bleeding through the bandage." Like just kind of like overly dramatic, you know. And so he very much emphasized negative and focused on negative, focused on doubt. He never like thought things would work out for him. He was always kind of, in kind of a fear place, you know. With Lucky Larry, on the other hand, he was always in a place of relaxation. He always started initially by reining in the challenge, by saying, "This is nothing." You know, just like make it into a small thing. Like, hey, I've done this before. Like, I can do this. If they can do it, I can do it. You know, this kind of mentality. And so kind of you can learn that from these two guys and take away what you want. And there is science to back this up. As you may be aware, you have something in your brainstem called the reticular activating system. So the reticular activating system is essentially a kind of like a dampener, if you will. Like it decreases the amount of information that goes from your spinal cord to your brain. And also decreases the amount of information spread between different areas of your brain. So one of the things that, and you can see it in action, for example, like if you ever buy a car and then later you're driving and you see your car like all over the road, those cars were always over the road. You just never noticed them before. And so now that you purchased a car, like now you notice that more because you've seen it. And so now it means more to you. So you're able to interpret more of it. And so there is some science to that, like basically backing these up as well. My personal favorite example is when like learning from race car training. You see, when you first learn how to drive a race car, the most dangerous thing that can happen in a race car is you're driving and like you lose control and the car spins, right? That's kind of like the worst thing that can happen. So basically, during this time, you know, this typically happens, especially as the speed increases. You can start to lose control, and the first thing the instructor does is they put you purposely into a spin, and they hold your head like this so you can't look at the wall. So like basically the guy has his arm like completely against your head like this, and so what it forces you to do is it forces you to look at the road, because part of the training or the lesson, or the reason why the guy does that is because so many people are afraid of hitting the wall in an accident, because it's the scariest thing that can happen to you, that they'll look at the wall and they'll actually drive the car into the wall. But by forcing yourself or having someone else force your head to look at the road, then what happens is you'll naturally drive to the road. So there's a life lesson in this that, you know, basically anytime you're in a spin or anytime you need to make a decision, essentially, you have to look at where you want to go. Do you want to go into the wall or do you want to go into the road? And so every day we step out into the racetrack of life, we have to ask our question. You know, do we go to the wall or do we go to the road? Do we want to step out in doubt or do we step out in faith? Both of them lead to destinations. Which one do you want to go to? And so do we start every day with faith in our hearts? Do you trust in yourself? Do you believe in yourself? Do you talk, you know, positively to yourself? When you ask yourself questions like, can I do this? You know, are you positive saying, yes, I can do this. I can make this happen. And so just remember Lucky Larry's secret. Worst comes to worst, just say, this is nothing. And then just go forward and realize the problems that we run into are much smaller than we can first sometimes see. And remember to make them small and then stay positive on yourself and believe that you can do it. So hopefully this is helpful. This is our first step on the internal stuff. Maybe you find it a little cheesy. Maybe you find it a little woo-woo. I don't know. But I will tell you that I wish I'd learned these before, you know. So hopefully they're of use to you.